Are you over 70 and worried about keeping your driving license? Well, you might want to sit down for this one because the UK government is seriously considering making eye tests compulsory for all drivers over 70, potentially starting from August 2025, and failing these tests could mean losing your right to drive altogether. If you're a senior driver or have elderly family members who depend on their car for independence, this could be the most important information you'll hear this year. So please make sure to subscribe to our channel right now because we'll be keeping you updated on all the latest changes that could affect your driving future. The landscape of driving regulations in the UK is about to undergo what many are calling the most significant overhaul in over a decade, and it's specifically targeting drivers over the age of 70 with mandatory eye testing requirements that could fundamentally change how senior citizens maintain their driving privileges. According to recent reports from The Times and multiple government sources, Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander is actively considering implementing compulsory eye tests every 3 years for drivers over 70, which would represent a dramatic departure from the current system that relies heavily on self-reporting and personal responsibility when it comes to vision problems. Currently, the UK operates under a relatively relaxed system where drivers over 70 simply need to renew their license every 3 years and declare that they can read a car number plate from 20 meters away with adequate field of vision, but there's no independent verification of these claims, making Britain one of only 3 countries in Europe that relies entirely on self-reporting for eyesight issues among elderly drivers. This system has come under intense scrutiny following a damning report in April from Dr. James Adderley, the former senior coroner for Lancashire, who sent an urgent communication to the Transport Secretary demanding immediate action after conducting an inquest into 4 separate deaths that were directly caused by drivers with failing eyesight who continued to operate their vehicles despite their diminished visual capabilities. The proposed changes would fundamentally alter this approach by requiring all drivers over 70 to successfully complete a mandatory professional eye test conducted by qualified optometrists every 3 years as a prerequisite for license renewal, and those who fail these tests would face an immediate driving ban with no exceptions or appeals process based on alternative assessments. This represents a seismic shift from trusting elderly drivers to police themselves regarding their visual fitness to drive toward a system of compulsory, independent medical verification that treats vision as a measurable safety requirement rather than a personal declaration. But here's what's particularly concerning for many seniors. The government's own statistics show that between 2004 and 2023, the number of people killed or seriously injured in road collisions involving at least one driver over 70 increased by 12%, rising from 3,082 to 3,451 casualties, which provides the statistical ammunition that policymakers are using to justify these unprecedented restrictions on elderly drivers. However, critics argue that these figures don't account for the significant increase in the overall population of drivers over 70 during the same period, nor do they consider whether vision problems were actually the primary cause of these accidents rather than other factors like reaction time, medication effects, or general health conditions. The reaction to these proposals has been swift and polarizing, with motoring organizations like the AA and IAM Road Smart expressing cautious support for the measures, arguing that vision checks for older drivers can make a real difference in road safety and that such a strategy is long overdue given that road deaths have plateaued over the past decade. AA President Edmund King stated that these new measures will not only modernize the UK's approach to saving lives but also provide renewed momentum in making roads safer for everyone, while Nicholas Lies from IAM Road Smart acknowledged that while many drivers over 70 are safe and competent, health issues and confidence can impact driving abilities, making it sensible to review whether changes are necessary. However, organizations representing pensioners and elderly rights have dismissed these plans as discriminatory and lacking in evidential foundation, with Dennis Reed, director of Silver Voices, arguing that there's no case for picking out the over 70s for compulsory eye tests every 3 years and that the organization is unaware of any evidence suggesting accidents involving 70-year-olds caused by eyesight problems are any more common than in other age groups. Reed points out that older people, who have access to free eyesight tests through the NHS, are far more likely to have self-corrected their vision through spectacles or cataract operations compared to younger drivers who might ignore vision problems due to cost concerns or inconvenience. What makes this situation particularly complex is the broader context of road safety in the UK, where government statistics show that 1,633 people were killed and almost 28,000 were seriously injured in road collisions in 2024, with numbers remaining relatively constant despite various safety initiatives implemented over the past decade. The Department for Transport acknowledges that road safety measures haven't been reviewed for over a decade, and they are promising to set out the next steps for their comprehensive road safety strategy in due course, which will likely include not just the eye testing requirements but also potential reductions in the drink-drive limit and stricter enforcement of seatbelt regulations. For seniors currently driving, the immediate question becomes, what should you be doing right now to prepare for these potential changes? The most practical step is to schedule a comprehensive eye examination with a qualified optometrist as soon as possible, not just to assess your current visual acuity but to establish a baseline for future comparisons and to identify any developing conditions like cataracts, glaucoma, or macular degeneration that could affect your driving ability. Even if these regulations don't come into effect until August 2025, being proactive about your eye health demonstrates responsibility and could help you address any issues before they become serious enough to threaten your driving privileges. Additionally, it's crucial to understand that the current self-reporting system means you're legally required to inform the DVLA immediately if you develop any eye condition that affects your driving, and failing to do so could invalidate your insurance and result in legal consequences if you're involved in an accident. The DVLA already has the authority to request further information from your GP or arrange separate medical assessments if they have concerns about your fitness to drive, so maintaining good relationships with your healthcare providers and keeping thorough records of any eye treatments or vision changes will be essential. Looking ahead, these proposed regulations represent just the beginning of what could be a much broader transformation of how the UK approaches elderly driving privileges, with some experts suggesting that mandatory eye tests could eventually be expanded to include other medical assessments such as cognitive function tests, reaction time measurements, or periodic practical driving evaluations. The precedent being set here could fundamentally change the relationship between age and driving rights, moving away from the current presumption that competent adults should retain their driving privileges until they voluntarily surrender them or are involved in an incident that demonstrates their unfitness. The timeline for implementation remains uncertain, with government sources indicating that the full road safety strategy will be announced in autumn 2025, but the specific details of how eye testing would be administered, who would bear the costs, and what appeals processes might be available for those who fail the tests are still being developed. This uncertainty is causing considerable anxiety among elderly drivers who depend on their cars for essential activities like medical appointments, grocery shopping, and maintaining social connections that are crucial for their physical and mental well-being. In conclusion, while these proposed changes to DVLA eye testing requirements for drivers over 70 are still in the consideration phase, the momentum behind them suggests that some form of mandatory vision testing is likely to become reality within the next few years, making it essential for senior drivers to stay informed about developments and take proactive steps to maintain their eye health and driving competency in preparation for what could be a dramatically different regulatory landscape.